He said justice.
So Aaron created this to present to Estelle, if you want to hear after your flowers. It's beautiful. I know. All right, but when after? Like when it's all done? I think when it's all done, it makes the most sense after then. Okay. Before they go to the.
All right, so let me get.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, almost afternoon. This fills my heart like nothing else. Happy birthday. My name is Susan Marinov-Zausner. I'm the president of the Intrepid Museum, and of course, on behalf of all our trustees, let's hear that again. I was joking. Just a huge welcome to our former crew members, your family members, your friends, visitors that are with us. You have a very special few moments ahead of you. It is the anniversary, the birthday, the commissioning of the Intrepid. So on August 16th, 1943, we call this the engineering marvel. The Intrepid was commissioned. 78 years later to the day, we are so amazingly honored and thrilled to be hosting you, to be celebrating your ship, your home, with you and the legacy that you created within its steel walls. Now, I just want you to know that before I get to the end, in 2 years, I expect everybody back, next year, of course, too, but in 2 years for the 80th, because we're gonna have some amazing things planned, and it's gonna be quite a celebration like we did on the 70th and 75th. So I would like to recognize a few folks individually. Stu Gelband, president of the Intrepid Former Crew Member Association. Stu, where are you? Aaron Resnick, our first vice president of the association. Tony Nibbs, the association's second vice president. And Jerry Fiola. Where is Jerry again? Jerry Fiola, our former Crew Members Association board. Thank you for all you do to take care of all of our crew members and this museum. This past year and a half, and I think anyone who knows me knows I get a little emotional, so I'm going to apologize in advance, has been a very tough year for many of us. And it's impacted our cherished former crew members community especially hard. On Memorial Day, we held a small and poignant ceremony to remember and acknowledge those we tragically lost. And just recently, we sadly lost World War II veteran and longtime museum volunteer, a great friend, Jerry Gottlieb. Jerry served as an aviation machinist mate aboard Intrepid in 1945, and he and his wife, Estelle, continued to serve the museum for many years as dedicated volunteers. Jerry split his time between the navigation bridge and the hangar deck, sharing stories of service for the enrichment of our visitors. And so recently, just last week, I heard from a former Intrepid team member who had managed our tour guides at one time. And I'm going to quote what he said to me in his email. I heard Jerry Gottlieb passed away recently. I cannot begin to explain how much he and Estelle played into the person I have become. He helped me understand the ship and its history in a way nobody else at the museum ever tried. As the news of Jerry's passing is spreading amongst the former tour guides, they're reaching out to me and they're thanking me for scheduling them on the bridge with Jerry. Jerry was very special and really inspired those of us who told the museum's story day in and day out. Estelle, Jerry's beloved wife, is here with us today, along with their son, Steve. And Estelle and Steve, Zach Blutner, who wrote those words, is here with us today as well, specifically for you and for the birthday. Our museum staff, our entire museum staff, our volunteers, and his fellow former crew members miss Jerry dearly. And it is just heartwarming and heart-filling that you're here with us today. If you will, please join me in a moment of silence for all of the Intrepid former crew members who are no longer with us. Thank you. A commissioning ceremony marks the day a vessel officially joins the Navy fleet and its crew is welcomed aboard. Intrepid was in service for 31 years from August 16th of 1943 through to 1974, and it played critical roles, World War II, in the Cold War, in Vietnam, and the space race. We celebrate the commissioning anniversary each year to honor you, our crew, the men who served aboard your ship, our ship. Your stories of ingenuity, of perseverance, and bravery are the foundation for all that we do here, and we thank you for trusting us to preserve your history for future generations. We've recorded hundreds of oral histories to capture your firsthand accounts of what life was like on board this ship. We work with you and your families who wish to donate artifacts to the museum's collection so that these representations of your service can be preserved for years to come and taught to our future generations. And crew members, you volunteer at the museum to connect with our visitors and meet with students to generously offer your living history. And there is nothing second to that. At Intrepid, we use your personal stories and experiences and this massive wonder of technology to educate and inspire over 55,000 school children annually, the majority who are underserved, and we teach them STEM education through your stories. We provide a plethora of opportunities for those with special needs and numerous opportunities to experience the museum free of charge in order to help break down barriers. We conduct a myriad of impactful programs for veterans and active duty military personnel that provide a supportive museum experience for returning service members and veterans from all conflicts, particularly those with post-traumatic stress, and with the aim of building a community and easing the transition back home. The Intrepid is accessible to all veterans, regardless of distance, finance, or abilities. And during these last 18 challenging months, we strove to continue to fulfill our mission and serve our constituents when they needed us most. The isolation caused by COVID created a very critical void for compelling programming. The museum quickly pivoted to serve the needs of our local, national, and our global communities by moving much of our programs to that virtual space. And for our veterans who were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, we turned their programming into virtual online communities, facilitating and encouraging them to continue to forge social connections, so critical during this forced isolation. As you were always there for us, we will always be there for you, and you have our promise. Crew members, your stories are remarkable, and they are inspirational, and it is our privilege and our duty to preserve and present the living history of the ship and those who served on board to all. I thank you so much for being here today, representing the 50,000 men who served aboard this ship. We are so forever grateful. And with that, I would like to now introduce Ben Levinson, Director of Volunteer Programs, who is so close with so many of you and knows you so well. And he would like to say a few words about Jerry. Come on up.
Thank you, Susan. As Susan said, my name is Ben Levinson. I oversee the volunteer program here at the museum. And obviously, we've all suffered a great loss earlier this year with the passing of former crew member and longtime museum volunteer Jerry Gottlieb. And even though Jerry was 93 years old and he had experienced numerous health issues over the past year, I felt a sense of shock when I learned that he was no longer with us. Because to me, Jerry was always a fighter, both literally and figuratively. Born shortly before the beginning of the Great Depression, raised in the Lower East Side of the 1930s, Jerry was a self-described small, scrappy Jewish kid who quickly learned the need for self-defense. 14 years old when Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, he was too young to join the Navy, which he wanted to do. But the next year, in 1942, he enlisted in the National Guard. He spent 2 years with the Guard before enlisting in the Navy at the age of 17. And he was quickly shipped to California in the beginning of 1945 and assigned to USS Intrepid, then undergoing repairs from kamikaze damage suffered the previous November. As an aviation machinist mate, Jerry worked on Intrepid's aircraft in Hangar 3, exactly where we stand today. And he only served aboard the ship for a few months because he was ordered along with the ship to return to the United States after another kamikaze attack, this one suffered during the Battle of Okinawa. When Intrepid would set sail for the Pacific again, Jerry was not going back with her. He missed the ship's departure due to an emergency leave, because his father was sick, so he was given time off. When the ship returned, Jerry wasn't there. Instead, he went back to the Pacific, this time as part of a Seabees unit. And he stayed with the Seabees. He left after World War II, but would return during the Korean War. And in typical Jerry fashion, he continued his fighting ways. After a fellow sailor hurled anti-Semitic comments his way, Jerry told me he put him in a chokehold and threatened to throw him off the side of the ship. Needless to say, Jerry was put on report. Not too long after that, while still in the Seabees, Jerry was sent to Camp Endicott in Rhode Island, and upon arrival, he was assigned to a work detail and told to rake and clean up the lawn. You won't be surprised to learn Jerry thought this was a waste of his time, and he wasn't afraid to say so. So he told the commanding officer, "You broke up my life, you separated me from my wife and my business, and you expect me to go out here and mow and rake the lawn? Forget about it." And so Jerry was put on report again. And if you think that he mellowed out in his post-Navy days or years of retirement, you obviously didn't know Jerry. Ask me later about the time someone just a few years ago accused him of stealing a cup of coffee. His response would make the saltiest of sailors blush. And I think it was this fighting spirit and stubbornness that I most admired about Jerry. I first met the Gottliebs when I began working with the volunteers back in 2015. Thankfully, my job of managing Jerry, if anyone could actually manage him, was made much easier because Estelle was here to help in that task. But for all the ruckus Jerry created when he was on the ship, it was dwarfed by the amazing work that he did for the museum. He volunteered here for over 30 years, and with both Jerry and his good friend Willie Neuweiler, who we also lost not too long ago, they did amazing work, spent thousands of hours restoring many of the ship's historic spaces. The bridges look the way they do today because of Jerry and Willie's hard work. And just as important, if not more so, it was the knowledge and firsthand stories of service that Jerry shared with so many of our visitors. Whether stationed on the bridge or here on the hangar deck, as soon as that sign there of Jerry and his Blues went out, you'd have thought the Beatles were aboard. People from all over the world lined up to shake his hand and thank him for his service. When asked about returning to the ship as part of the Oral History Project, Jerry said, "I love working on the ship, and the people on the ship are very nice to me. I come down with my wife, and we have a good time. It's wonderful to come here to talk to people from all over the world. I loved it when I was here originally, but I like it all the more now. It's just part of me." Sadly, things won't be the same without Jerry here. He and Willie both taught me so much about this ship, but more importantly, they instilled in me a love for Intrepid. Some people look at me funny when I tell them that I love a ship I didn't even serve on. I was never in the Navy, and certainly never aboard Intrepid when she was in service. But if you spend enough time walking her decks and talking to all the former crew members, it's very hard not to feel a special bond with the ship. As one of Jerry's shipmates wrote shortly after the conclusion of World War II, it has often been said that ships, like human beings, have individual personalities, some good, some bad, some cranky. We who sailed aboard the Intrepid, I believe, will all agree that she was a good ship, for we are the only ones really qualified to judge her. She had a few idiosyncrasies that were hard for others to understand, but none will dispute her fighting heart, her indomitable courage, her ability to take punishment as well as give it. She was truly a fighting lady living up to her name, Intrepid, every inch of the way. So happy 78th to Intrepid, and fair winds and following seas to Jerry Gottlieb. Thank you.
So Estelle and Steve, on behalf of the former crew members, and you'll note it is the artistry too of Aaron, who put together this for you from your former crew member association, your friends, your family. You will always know he will be loved and treasured forever. Estelle and Steve, you have quite a legacy. Thank you all so much for being here. Happy birthday, and join us now. Right, we have lunch out here? Yep. Come on up. Let's go.